What's up, guys? Eli here, back for a CD collection video. It's kind of funny. I considered this, not to use fancy terminology, but I consider this series to be like my flagship series. This is why I started this channel, to go through my collection and stuff like that. But I was going through my previous videos, and I haven't done one of these in like 5 months. I don't know why that is. I think it was because I had a couple of these that I hadn't listened to yet, and I have a new policy when I do collection videos. Stuff that I've had in my collection for years and years, I'm not going to show it until I've listened to it. That is a rule that I've imposed on myself. So anyways, we're back with honestly my favorite type of video to do, at least when it comes to, you know, the musical end of things that I do on this channel. So as always, we have 10 releases, and let's talk about them, huh? The 1988 fifth album from John Anderson, fifth solo album, I should say. John Anderson, you might know him, famous lead singer of Yes, their original singer, I should say. He started doing solo stuff in the early 70s, so really not that long after Yes, although, you know, at a much slower pace. He was pretty busy with Yes in the early 70s, but he still cranked out solo albums when he had the time. So this one, like I said, is called In the City of Angels. I bought this because not only am I a huge fan of Yes, most of the musicians here are from the band Toto, who I am also a big fan of. So, you know, as you know, or as you might know, as you should know, the members of Toto are basically famous LA session members. They played on hundreds, maybe even thousands of albums over the decades. So this album, it's okay. It's okay. It's no Yes. It's you know, when John Anderson typically does solo stuff, it's not Yes. It's not super progressive or anything like that. It's usually some kind of, I guess you could call it art rock, art pop rock. Really, I mean, this is not anything unusual for 1988, if you know what I mean. It's all right. It's all right. I wish I liked it more, but it certainly isn't bad. It's certainly worth a listen if you're a fan of Yes, or if you're just a fan of John Anderson's voice, then go for it. But I think he's done better solo stuff, but it's not bad. And from 2019, we have another John Anderson solo album, 1,000 Hands, Chapter 1. It's called 1,000 Hands because a whole lot of people collaborated for this album. I don't know if it's literally 500 people. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I've listened to this a number of times. Now, this is a lot more progressive than that album that I just showed. I don't know what you'd call it. You know, maybe you'd call it... Maybe you'd call this... I guess you could call this a prog album because, as I've said before, and I'm sticking to it, human beings, we like to put things in boxes. In John Anderson's mind, I made an album that I wanted to make. You know, artists and musicians don't usually try to pick a genre and then fit themselves into that genre as much as they can. They don't give a fuck about titles and genres, and you could definitely call this a prog album. You know, prog, fusion, world music. There's all kinds of stuff on here, really. There's lots of different sounds, some electronic-y stuff. I quite like this, actually. You got some Yes guys on here, which is cool, especially, like, you got Chris Squire on here, and that's really cool. Really cool to hear Chris Squire. You got Alan White. Yeah, I actually, to be honest, I have not gone through the list of people. I don't know, maybe you can read that. These are all the people that worked on this album, and I heard John even took this on the road. I doubt every single one of these people went out with him on the road, but still, a lot of them did. So it was a huge project, and it's a cool one. If you're a Yes fan, I would definitely recommend this to you. And if you are a Yes fan, and if you've heard this album, what do you think? Let me know. I've never really heard too many people talk about it.
Now that I know you are with me all the way, every day.
And from 1975, we have the debut self-titled Journey album. Journey, you know, we know who they are. You know who they are. Even if you don't like them, you know. Been active since 1973, still active to this day. I only like their first, three or four? I think 3 albums, maybe 4. I can't remember how far I go. But so what I didn't know about Journey for the longest time is that they weren't this arena-ready pop rock band from the start, which is always what I assumed. But in the 70s, early 70s especially, they were like basically a prog band. It's, a rock band with heavy doses of prog and little bits of jazz fusion, and definitely artsy and very, in my opinion, very progressive. This album kicks fucking ass. I don't give a shit about Journey beyond, like I said, the first 3 or 4 albums. Yeah, I know, I get it. They made some catchy music that's kind of cool. I don't care about their 80s stuff at all. But the early Journey, man, so goddamn good. If you're a prog fan and you haven't heard the first couple Journey albums, you're big time fucking up. So check them out. I have the other 2 on vinyl, so this is the only one I'm going to be showing today. So start here. If you haven't heard it, I promise you'll thank me later. This album is so good. Shifting over to black metal, we got Judas Iscariot. Heaven in Flames, one of my favorite albums from them. This is from 1999. This is a 2020 Red Stream reissue. This was their 5th album. Judas Iscariot, famous American black metal band, project of Akhenaten from 1992 to 2002. Out of somewhere Illinois, I'm sure the Chicago area. Seems like all of Illinois is the Chicago area, but what do I know? Judas Iscariot, if you haven't heard, it's just raw, fairly simplistic black metal, especially on the early stuff. What can I say? Some of the best black metal to come out of the U.S. Some people would probably say some of the best black metal ever made. I'm a fan. I wish I had more stuff. I only have 2 albums, but I'm definitely a Judas Iscariot fan. If you like Dark Throne, if you like the early Dark Throne, Judas Iscariot are very much for you. In addition to that, I have To Embrace the Corpse's Bleeding from 2002. This is the 2010 repress on Red Stream. Their 7th studio album, arguably my favorite. Akhenaten refined his songwriting, I feel like. He refined his musicianship. He was a little bit better at he had tightened up his songwriting. He had tightened up his musical skills. Still raw, simplistic black metal, but on this album, I can't remember if Heaven in Flames had Cryptic Winter on drums, but this one definitely does, and you can tell, because on most of the early stuff, Akhenaten played the drums himself, and he's a notoriously terrible drummer. He's not a drummer. I think he was just the dude that's like, I can play black metal beats enough to get the album done. But Cryptic Winter, aka Dwayne Timlin, is a technically accomplished drummer. So he brought this. He brought a completely different dynamic to Judas Iscariot, like it or not. To be honest, I could take it or leave it. I am totally fine with the sloppy Akhenaten drumming. I still think those albums are great. The bad drumming does not bother me because it's black metal, and I feel like it fits just fine. But I'm also a fan of black metal with really good drummers, and that's what you got here. And I think this album is just great. Oh boy, so the remaining 5 albums are all Jungle Rot albums. So Jungle Rot, death metal band out of Wisconsin. They've been around, since 1992. I've always said Jungle Rot were kind of one of the purveyors of this modern wave of old school death metal. OSDM people call it. I don't really like that term, but it works. Although they started in 92, you might think, oh, they were just part of the early wave of death metal, second wave, I guess you'd say, but they're probably one of those bands that formed in high school, because they didn't really do anything until I think their first album is 94, 95, something like that. So it took them a couple years after formation to record something. That's why I consider them to be kind of one of the unsung heroes of, you know, again, this throwback death metal that's been popular now for over a decade. I feel like Jungle Rot were one of the first bands to be in that camp and not really get any credit for it. So, starting off with Fueled by Hate from 2004. This is their 4th album. I'm not going to have a lot to say about these albums because Jungle Rot are Jungle Rot. They don't change a whole lot. I think most of their albums sound different. I'm not saying they're one of those bands that like put out one album and just keep releasing the same album, but they're a band that are pretty steadfast in their own style, and they're not a band to experiment or anything like that. So this, you know, they play, if you've never heard them, they play kind of a knuckle dragging, at times kind of slightly hardcore tinged death metal, you know, primal knuckle draggy type death metal. Think early Obituary, and think early Obituary with just a little bit of Hatebreed, and that kind of gives you an idea of what Jungle Rot sound like. I prefer their earlier stuff, their 90s stuff, but some of their later stuff is really good. They did lose me at a point in their mid career. They kind of started to incorporate the hardcore influences a little much for my tastes, but they kind of scaled that back and went more in the direction of just pure death metal. So that made me happy. Then I've got their 6th album, What Horrors Await, from 2009. So this came out on Victory Records, a label that puts out pretty much strictly hardcore. I think they're defunct at this point, but Victory was a popular band or a popular label for many, many years. So if I remember correctly, this is when they started to incorporate the hardcore influences just a little, maybe to appeal to the Victory Records crowd. I'm not sure. Honestly, I think these guys have always liked hardcore. I think, you know, from day one, I've always kind of got that from them. They just didn't show it as much in the very early albums. So this one is not one of my favorites of theirs, but it's still pretty good. Then from 2013, their 8th album, Terror Regime. This is one of the albums where they scaled it back a little bit. They started to incorporate the hardcore influences a little much for my taste, and this one scaled back to just pure death metal. This is a really good album. They're still on Victory Records here, but yeah, I'm hearing just a pure, sloppy, simple, primal death metal band here, and I quite dig it. This is one of my favorite things that they've done. Ninth studio album from 2015, Order Shall Prevail. Very cool artwork. Still on Victory Records at this point. Again, cool artwork. You got some guest guest appearances on here from I think Acacia Strain, which is very much a hardcore band. I think Max Cavalera makes an appearance here from Sepultura, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong about both of those. Whatever. Let me know if I'm wrong. Oh yeah, let's see. Individuals, you got Alex Webster's name is on here from Cannibal Corpse. I don't know. Pretty good album. Not one of my favorite things that they've done. I like Terror Regime a little bit more, but this is still pretty good. Then you've got their 10th album here, Self-Titled, from 2018. This album's really good. This is better than Order Shall Prevail, in my opinion, quite a bit better. They just did something right here, other than the badass cover art. Check that out. They just did something right here. I don't know what it is, man. Still on Victory Records. I thought Victory had folded, but maybe I'm wrong. So, yeah, they just refined. Everything is just Jungle Rot refined here. It just seemed like they matured in their songwriting, they matured in their musicianship. This just sounds like a veteran death metal band that knows what they want to do and knows how to achieve it. It's just, it's just a really good album. Is it going to blow you away? I don't know. But if you're a diehard death metal fan, I think you could do a lot worse than checking this album out. I'd say, matter of fact, this, if you're like, what album should I start with Jungle Rot? You could start with this one and be fine. So yeah, check it out. All right, that's it, guys. 10 albums. I had fun talking about them. Hopefully you have fun watching this and letting me know how you feel about the music I just talked about. Thanks for stopping by. As always, Louis says hello. He's right here, and we'll talk soon, huh? Fucking cheers.